All right, everybody. Welcome to the Indie Show. I'm super excited to be here with my guest today, John Marcoux. Did I say that right, John?
Marcoux, Marcoux, it goes either way.
Okay. Which do you prefer?
Marcoux.
Okay,
Yeah.
Marcoux. Got it. You
You,
guys, John Marcoux is kind of changing my life right now. So, so John is the owner of 105F, hot yoga studio here in Chicago, which is like 3 blocks away from where I live. And I recently got started into it a couple months ago. Started really liking it, so I reached out to him and I was like, "Will you please kind of share the message of hot yoga in your story, and also just kind of business lessons learned with the Friends of Indie Law Group?" So John, can you tell us a little bit more about the business and the story behind it?
well, thanks for the invite. As soon as I got the email, I clicked the first date available, which was this date, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So your question is, how did I get into hot yoga?
Yeah.
I was an attorney for 6 years, mostly intellectual property, trademarks and copyrights, and a little bit of patent work. Although that I learned just enough to realize that's the real deal. Anyway, it was super stressful.
Yep.
And to the point where I didn't even think, I look back, my dashboard did not even have gauges to understand just how high my stress levels were. And when I took my first hot yoga class, I was physically humiliated. I thought I was an athlete. I couldn't do anything. And I left thinking I'll never go back. And then the sudden realization washed over me. I haven't felt this stress free since the day I walked into a law firm.
Mm.
And then as the evening progressed, I thought, I'm going to go back there, and I'm going to go back there, and I'm going to go back there until I can at least do the full class, which seemed very far away at that point.
Yep.
And my stress, the stress was so flushed out. And I looked around the city and I saw all the skyscrapers, and I thought, how many people are up in these ceiling glass towers, as stressed as I was, who need this? I think this is probably a pretty good business too. And it didn't take very long for me to skedaddle out of the farm into the entrepreneurial space.
So let's back up a little bit. Can you paint a picture for us, John, of kind of what these typical like 90-minute beginner hot yoga sessions look like?
Okay, well, first, as soon as you walk in the room, you feel the heat and it feels unreasonable. And if you're not into taking saunas or hot tubs, or you might be of a certain genetic disposition where you're not from tropical zones, you don't like heat, you don't sweat much. It's a shock.
Yeah.
It's a shock. And I count myself among those folk. And the poses themselves mostly seem quite attainable if you're looking at a photograph or a video of somebody doing it. But when you're in a room that hot and the heat is bearing down on you for up to 90 minutes, even bending over like you're tying your shoe seems like an epic adventure. So you have to tumble your way through this a few times and realize, oh, I can do this. My body feels better. Something is lighting up inside of me. And for those for whom the light bulb goes off, they can chase it, like you.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll speak to it like some more. So I went really not knowing what to expect. And like you, John, I was looking for some type of way to reduce a lot of the stress that I was having. And I'll get into why in a minute, because I do want to share something that I don't think I've shared with the group yet. But I walk in, it's super hot. And the thing that I think I love most about it is that there's a trainer in the room who is walking and talking you through everything for the full session. And so it's not like, you're either doing like cardio and your just mind can race about other things, or you're lifting weights and between your reps you can rest and pull out your phone or whatever, you think about stuff. This forces me to not think about work for a full 90 minutes, because all that I can think about is how hot it is and how hard it is to do these poses.
Well, that's a nice compliment. Yes, the teacher is, say there's a pose and it has 22 instructions to put it together. The instructions are sequenced where if a beginner comes in and they get to the fourth instruction and they go, and they can't do another thing, that's okay.
Yep.
You keep struggling there. And with each class, you start to pick up on the other details, and the pose flowers for you. True, the heat and just trying to balance on one leg or do simple tasks with your
Yep.
body commands your consciousness so completely. You don't have the luxury of worrying about what work is or what bills you have to pay or relationships you have to massage to get to the optimal place. You have to just go into a take care of yourself mode for a while. That's very healing.
Yeah. And it's the other thing, I mean, you said it really well. Like there are a bunch of different set of instructions for each pose, and you kind of do what you can. And it was great for me because they told me, you know, your first time, your goal is to just stay in the room, lay down as much as you have to. You don't have to do all the poses. And I really liked that it's kind of like they're pushing you to do what you can, but you don't feel like a failure if you can't do whatever. And I am not very flexible at all. And so I usually can't get too far in the beginning. It's getting better. I'm surprised how quickly I am like progressing through some of these things. But there are a couple of things that it's hard because I feel like a lot of times the trainers say the same or similar things through each pose. And I'm starting now to finally hear certain things that have probably been said before, but I didn't pick up on. And one of the big ones was you have to make sure that your breathing is staying the same. And if you feel like you're pushing yourself so hard that after the pose is over, you like have to catch your breath, that's probably a sign that you overstepped that posture.
Well, one of the things you just said echoes ancient wisdom. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so even though the teacher is physically in front of you and talking, when you're ready to hear it, that line that you've been blocking out all of a sudden sinks in. It's a nice experience. Those tumble out for years. It doesn't just happen your first month or two.
I love that. And it really is impressive. I mean, you've done a great job with your trainers. They're all really, really good in the 90-minute sessions that I've gone to. John, can you talk a little bit more about, like, was there anything in particular that what you were dealing with kind of stress wise that you remember the first couple of times that you started yoga, or was it just kind of a general sense of I'm super, super stressed and I need something?
Okay. So I was a mid-level associate at a very large law firm.
Yeah.
Prestigious, you name it. And so I had all the stresses of a young associate, but I also was taking on more and more responsibility, and I was closer to partnership than I was now to just walking into a law firm. And I was starting to take note of those stressors. And I remember that final year in a firm, I kept thinking, everybody seems to think making a partner in a law firm is this great goal, but just stepping from associate to partner, the pay versus the responsibility, it didn't seem like that good of a bargain, even as a mid-level guy looking at that horizon. And looking at what people were doing around me to get to that holy grail of professionalism, I didn't see much healthy activity going on, and I had in addition to just agitated energy, difficult sleep. I could never turn off the war drums.
Yep.
I had so many deadlines and so many cases and so many arguments going on in my head. I would put my head down the pillow at night and bounce back up going, did I miss something in this? Did I miss something in this?
Yep.
And when I woke up in the morning, I didn't have much time to think, I can hear the birds chirping through the glass. No, none of that. I was stressed. I mean, there was no real rest. And it only takes a few years for that to really start to be poisonous. You can still be a very young person and be taking yourself down.
Oh, I love that. No, and I can totally relate. I mean, I was maybe a year and a half or two into the first law firm that I started with, and you're right. It was a combination of, partnership wasn't on the horizon yet, but I was thinking, there's nobody really here whose lives I want. Everybody seems really stressed. Everybody is always seeming to be in reactive mode. Like you don't really have a say over your own schedule. It's just you come in and you're slammed with whatever work presents itself for the day. And it wasn't a good fit for me. But going back to the sleep, I think that's also been a huge thing for me with hot yoga is I usually go in the evenings, like around 6:30 to 8 or so. And it definitely helps me fall asleep.
Deeply.
Yeah.
Deep dreams. Those morning classes sometimes will force a nap too, and then when the nap gods come a calling, you'd be a fool to ignore them. You gotta find a place to go. Shut it down.
John, we really didn't talk about this before we hit the record button, but have you, in addition to being a business owner and, practicing law and doing all this stuff, now that you kind of have your own schedule, are you forming like a morning routine for yourself or an evening routine or?
Well, I have been bouncing around. I created a lot of demands in my life in the past couple of years, and they're all fun ones of my own making, which I enjoy so much. But now that I'm pretty fully engaged, I do have a 6th and an 8th grader, and I'm now in a short window where I'm relevant in life, but also I can blink an eye, and they'll probably be both off and running to college and beyond too. So I find my rhythms when I can make sure I'm here to send them off to school in the morning or drive one of them to the junior high, or weekends, or my son's. I don't recall my 6th grade son ever saying, "Hey, Dad, let's go see a movie." It was always me saying, "Let's go see a movie." So when he wanted to see Black Panther this weekend, I was part of the Red Seas and made sure we went and had the 3D glasses and had the whole.
Yeah. How was it?
It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
It did everything a big, good, beautiful action movie should do, but it took it to a whole new level. The mythology connected this wonderful, glorious past from Africa with modern day streets and kids having a tough life in Oakland. And it put it together in a way where I can imagine so many people walked out of that movie theater 2 inches taller than when they walked in. I thought it was a magnificent movie.
Okay, that's super exciting for me because my wife thinks that all superhero movies are the same. And I'm always like, you should watch this. And she's like, no, it's just a superhero who beats the villain. And I'm like, no, there's always more to it. But I think with this one, maybe I can convince her to go.
They hit it in the center of the gong. This one's a good one. It's a good one.
Awesome.
So you're asking me about my rhythms. Right now, they've been family-centric.
Good.
But I make sure, the other rhythm I have is what class am I teaching that day and at what studio.
Oh, you teach? Okay.
5 days a week.
Wow.
And that sets up my day. I have to pick the studio and pick the time, and then I build the day around it. So my kids and my personal class teaching schedule, and then I fit everything else around it.
I love that. No, and I think that's kind of what you got to do. You got to figure out like what your big rocks or your big priorities are in the day. Make sure that you set time for those, and then everything else kind of finds its way around it.
Core competencies. Stick to the fundamentals. Don't get all fancy. Watch out for that empire. We talked about empire before.
Yeah. Let's get into that. So before we get into the topic of empire, let's talk a little bit more about kind of you and your businesses and what you've got going on, so people have a sense of kind of where we're taking the topic. But
okay,
you went and you had a really great eventually experience with hot yoga, and that eventually inspired you to start your own studio.
Yes, it was New Year's coming up. I was on vacation, and the daydream, the escapist daydream of leaving a law firm and going have another life, it started to really take shape around this idea. And when I expressed it, when I vocalized it to a beautiful young lady I had just met, she said, "If you need a receptionist, I'm there."
Wow.
And I started drafting my business plan that evening. I gave my resignation a couple months later, went to training, moved to Chicago, and got engaged to that young lady later that fall.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was a big year. That's
crazy.
Yeah,
and so what year was that?
2001.
2001. And that was what location again?
Wicker Park on Milwaukee Avenue.
Okay, so that was Wicker Park. And then the second location was Lincoln Park.
Yeah, 100-year-old movie theater that you attend just above LensCrafters, Clark and DePercy.
Yeah,
it was a fun conversion.
It's so crazy that it's right there, because it really is like 2 blocks away from where I live. It makes it so convenient. And then you've got one more location that was in 2011 that you started?
Yeah, Dearborn Station. It's a train station from the 1880s at Dearborn and Polk. And there's a huge old clock tower. It looks like something out of a Frankenstein movie. We're right behind the clock tower.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Now, was that by design for you to kind of pick these locations where you were kind of interested in like the history around them?
Well, it was I mean, I never took a business class in my life.
Yeah.
But it did occur to me from the hot yoga classes that I did attend around the country in early 2001 that it was mostly women and professional women. And there was a certain level of education and business experience that seemed to be the sweet spot for the demographic we were looking for. So I did a simple real estate research, and I got 3 zip codes that popped up as having the greatest concentration of that demographic. Wicker Park, Lincoln Park, and South Loop.
Interesting. Yeah, we got a comment in from Nina who says that Bikram or hot yoga is such a time commitment, but it is amazing how much energy and time it gives back.
I agree, Nina, but I also agree that the modern demands required us to abbreviate the class. So we have equal amounts of 90-minute classes, the traditional time, and we have the same sequence of poses at 60 minutes. And the Smart 60 class is super popular.
You know, so I've done the 90, and I remember when I first got there, they said, you know, we have a 90-minute session, which is for beginners, and then we have a 60-minute session, which is a little bit more advanced, it's a little bit quicker. And my first thought was, wouldn't the beginner class be quicker? But now that I've done it, I can only imagine like how much, like it must be a significantly faster paced.
No, you'd be surprised. The 90-minute class, we do every pose twice. So you go nice and slow, you fall out of it, you jump back in, you take a break, you try it again, and there's trial and error that's more built into it. So it's longer, it's steadily paced. Once you get, okay, this is what this pose is, this is what this pose is, you go into the 60-minute class, it's the same pace, slightly up tempo. But most of the poses, we only do one set.
Okay.
So you do triangle right side, you do triangle left side, and you move on. And so it's got a little bit more of a feel to it, a little bit more of a tempo to it. And it can make your heart beat. I mean, it can humble you in different ways.
That's cool. Yeah, Nina, let us know how long the sessions are that you're going to, because Nina reached out to me earlier this week and said that she was getting back on the hot yoga bandwagon after being away from it for a while. And is getting excited. I saw
a picture of a big, beautiful family pop up with that comment, so I can understand if she's taking some time off.
Yeah. So Nina, in addition to having a family, she's got her own business that she's starting and working on and building out. And let's get back to the one that you have, John. So you've got 3 locations. Obviously, business is good enough for you to have those 3 locations that are filling up.
Well, you want to talk about life lessons?
Yeah.
The first 10 years of the business, it was so good. Business was so good. Hot yoga was so hot. There's no competition that we enjoyed a modest level of success, and it carried us for a decade. And I probably somewhere deep in my brain thought, oh, you're a genius. Starting a small business is so easy. Fast forward 7 years, and I'm looking back over the past 6, 7 years, and I'm thinking, whoa. All the challenges that weren't there at the beginning came washing over, and I've had to navigate my way through them, sometimes multiple at a time, to get back to stable. You showed up at a period where the sun started really coming out again. For various reasons. We're doing well. And throughout that drought, throughout those difficulties, we worked on our fundamentals. We taught the best classes we could. We maintained the heat right. We developed our games, but we really had to ride that one out. I mean, if you live a lifetime of an entrepreneur, somewhere across the arc of your career, there's going to be some rough years.
Yeah. Now, would you say that they were just kind of like necessarily rough years that you had to go through, or are there any kind of lessons learned through that period that you've learned?
We were going to get it. We were going to get it one way or the other. I'll give you 2 major factors, right?
Okay.
One is, and they combine forces. One is a super saturation of the boutique fitness market.
Yeah.
lots of places. There was an explosion, kind of like when all the flowers in the fields go in the springtime all at once. It was just like, whoa. Combine that with Groupon and ClassPass and other discount offerings saying, hey, try this yoga studio for 5 cents.
Yeah.
Hey, try this yoga studio. So what we saw was people were downloading all these Groupons, and they took a tour around Chicago, and they tried every one. You could go for an entire year of yoga for nothing if you just were willing to move studio to studio. And for a year or two, that was in vogue, and there was almost virtually nothing you could do about that. You were the hot studio for a bit, and then it was a ghost town for a while.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I think that's a pretty universal problem right now of like, what do you do in your business when, for whatever reason, whether it's technology or just saturated competition, like the price and value drops. And we're seeing this
demand.
Yep. And it's really prevalent right now. And even like the wedding industry space, a lot of today's new engaged couples don't want to pay for lots of things and think that they can do a lot themselves, and or they just don't have that perceived value of a planner being X amount of dollars anymore.
Right. A lot of tradition is crumbling. That's just one area. And so for part of the time, I'm sure I had my fingers crossed, hoping that the business would endure. We did have a decade of momentum behind us and goodwill and steady students that kept paying the bills and all, but it did tighten. It constricted. It was glacial, but it was tighter and tighter. And honestly, doing what we do, being at the front desk, remembering people's names, helping people get through all of this of modern life and sending them home so their head hits the pillow a little heavier, that proved to be very valuable again. I think people's perceived value of get me out of my head, actually, it spiked again in the past couple of years. And we've been working on seizing this and letting people know this is what we can offer for you.
Yeah. Well, let me kind of inject in here a little bit of my own story, which is that just the timing of learning about you and 105F was just perfectly aligned, because I ended up being in the hospital for about 2 weeks in November. There was a weird kind of reaction to medicine that I was having or whatever, but there was also this association of just stress as a business owner. And when I got out, it became very clear to me and my families and the doctors that I had to talk with that I had to do something to reduce stress, because I'm not a very stressful person, but I also like just can't deal with that on an ongoing basis sustainably. And so my sister-in-law was like, if I were you, Joey, I would check out hot yoga. I got really into it in the Chicago suburbs, and it looks like there's one next to you. I've heard of really good things about 105. And so I just kind of went, and it's been great. The value has been so worth it to me. And, I've talked about this before in the group. It's a really great thing to run a business that you love, because when you work overtime, you kind of enjoy it and you love it. And it's not like working for a job that you hate that's keeping you until 9, 10 p.m. But that sometimes makes it even harder to pull yourself away from it. And so having things like hot yoga or some way of forcing yourself to distance yourself from this thing that you love a little bit is super helpful.
I think of, when you say that, I think of the power button on my computer. When I have too many apps and everything's slowing down, I just hit reboot, and then it comes up fresh.
Yep.
And the CPU's ready to run like a dog with the leash off of it. And every time I go in, I took class yesterday, I come out and I go, it's like, it works. I keep convinced. It's amazing it doesn't stick in my head, but it's a testament to how subtle and insidious the brain is about taxing you and stressing you out and keeping you from being fully aware of how stressed you are until you're able to unburden yourself of it.
Yep.
That's a real story that you told me, and I think the community you're in. If you go to studios and see the same faces again and again, everybody's going to have a story of there's something similar happening there, where their doctor said to them, you'll always be on these blood pressure medications for the rest of your life, or you need to double down on this medicine, and 6 months later they went back to that doctor and the doctor said, what the hell are you doing? You don't need any medicine. Your blood pressure is healthy. You look good. What are you doing? Whatever you're doing, don't stop.
Right.
Those are the people who have been paying our rent for 17 years.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I think that two groups need to hear it. And I hope that with this video we can share it to both of these communities. One is the creative small business owner, again, having, something, probably a story similar to mine, where they're being stressed by this job that they've created, but they've chosen to create it. And, you need to have some stress and anxiety reducing things built into your day. But especially for the legal community, it's really interesting. I was listening to this kind of happiness expert, which he's more legit than that sounds, but he was invited to speak to a law school, I think, and the law school was they were trying to brag about how they were trying to build health and wellness into like the school curriculum. And they were telling this guy, we've got a whole week that we're calling Wellness Week, where we talk about, what to do if you get depressed, or, who you can talk to and what your options are. And the guy was like, that doesn't sound like a wellness week to me at all. That sounds like a sickness week. Like, you're not actually giving them tools to get out of what they're in. It's
a tour of the first aid kit. It's not, here's how you galvanize yourself. Here's how you stimulate your emotional immune system to deal with all these emotional stresses, both visceral and vicarious ones that you're experiencing your clients having. I mean, a client comes to you shaking, freaked out. You think you're going to go home that night and not be a little freaked out?
Yeah.
The law schools are training people to be in a bad place. And even law firms, the way they initiate the lawyers at those boot camp weeks, I've presented at a couple of them, and it's surprising how demoralized the young lawyers already appear at the week where I'm speaking about morale boosting. I'm thinking, you haven't even billed an hour yet, and you look like you need an IV bag on your arm. What is going on? Yeah,
well, you're right. I mean, on the law school side, as soon as you start, you get hit with this ranking system that tells you that you're not good enough unless you're in the top 5% or whatever. And then my experience in the legal profession is the masculinity of the legal profession is still so strong. And I've tried to talk to legal communities about either health and wellness, or like putting processes in place to kind of step outside of all of the administrative work you have to do as a lawyer. And people have come up to me and said, Joey, like, the reality of an attorney is it's hard. Like, you just have to do it. And it's like this self-defeating, like, I chose this, I just have to work hard and get through it. And, I have these clients that pay me and are expecting me to touch them every time they touch the law firm.
Yeah, let me just grit my teeth and get through this for 40 years and then take my pension and my quadruple bypass and go fishing. It does not sound like a life plan.
No. And I talk very rarely about the firm that I left. They were great people, but when I did decide to leave and I kind of gave my notice, the owner of the firm was like, Joey, I completely understand. I have 6, 7 kids. There's a reason why none of them went to law school. And
it's like the Silicon Valley parents not letting their kids play with the cell phones.
Yep.
I've been lecturing at law firms for 2 years now, because these happiness scientists, who are more legit than that sounds, but I mean, they're winning Nobel Prizes. These guys are no joke.
Yeah.
They have a new bag of tricks. And when they looked at what makes lawyers miserable, they found 3 cognitive traps that lawyers fall into, and they don't even know, they're not aware that they're in it. And being in a constant adversarial mindset, like I explained, that I couldn't put my head on the pillow right at night, makes these lawyers fall into these traps. And they're classified as demoralizers. They take away your hope and your courage and your loyalty and your confidence and enthusiasm on any given day, which feels like you're walking around with your battery going beep, beep, beep. That's
Yeah.
number one. And the three traps are chronic pessimism. The job trains you to constantly look at the horizon and say,
Yeah.
it's all going to go kablooey. The second one is low choice, high stress ecosystems, meaning you're constantly stressed out. And on any given moment basis, like you said, you're reacting to what's going on. You don't have a choice of what's going on. And the third part is called win-loss horizons. Lawyers are constantly engaging, thinking, I'm either going to win this battle or I'm going to go down on my back. So they're in the same mindset as gladiators. And that also takes its toll. And
Yeah. And
the analogies to PTSD are almost, they correlate almost one-to-one.
well, and just to complement that, there's this idea of like imperfection is failure.
Which is going to happen every day.
Yep.
Every day. So you're failing every day.
Yep.
How does that potion taste going down your throat? Not so good.
Oh, this is such a good conversation. Let's steer back to your business, and it sounds like things were going really, really well in the beginning. It sounds like you had pretty rapid accelerated growth. We talked before the show started about this idea of like having an empire and how that can be so dangerous and toxic. What are your thoughts on businesses and entrepreneurs who are kind of chasing after that idea of an empire for their business?
Well, let me say that was not my original chase.
Yeah.
The demand was so great.
You didn't have to. Yeah, it just happened.
Let's do it again. And then I didn't have no ambition for years to open any other studios, but one of the most intelligent, capable, beautiful yogis I've ever met took class with us, became a certified teacher, instinctively started managing the studio, and we hadn't even hired her yet. She was like from the heavens. And so she expressed an interest in opening a studio, and I said, I'd love to be your partner. And my other partner, Mike, so the third studio includes her. And Mara Vella, superstar, is basically been the heart of the studios and the operations and this. She just has it. And I'm so blessed to have been basking in her glow for the past 6 or 7 years, especially during the tough times.
Yeah.
That's
a good point, because I talk a lot about the dangers and the risks of when you bring on partners, but a partnership can be a great thing if it's the right fit.
And if you have respect and diverse ideas and diverse skills, I think it would be a nightmare if all three of us, we only know how to do certain things and none of us knew how to do the other things.
Right.
And I view, although we struggle with the vocabulary of how we classify the people working at the front desk, people who just teach or who instruct, and I get icky when I start feeling the same terminology from corporations come around,
Yeah.
But I really, they were small enough where it's somewhat like a good blanket on a chilly night. It's communal and warm, and people who have skills, they shine where they shine, and people who don't have skills readily admit, I'm ignorant. I'm not good at this. I'm a little clumsy. Can I get help? And there's a pool of about 30 to 40 of us, and people just jump in all the time. It's a nice amazing collective situation.
That's awesome that that's happened so kind of just naturally for you. But yeah, let's speak to that concept of an empire, because we talked about it before, and I want to make sure that we capture some of that live.
Okay, well, I think an empire, when you're talking about endeavors like, hey, I want to offer a place where people can go and do yoga and feel good and clear their mental and have their spirit shine, it gets icky. It just gets icky when you're looking at bottom lines and returns on investment and things like that. So for me, for my business, the motto since 2001 has been default to generosity. Every employee who's come through has heard this. Maybe something happens where you're at the front desk, or someone shows up and says, you say, oh, how would you like to play class? And they say, oh, I think I still have a class. And you have an exchange, and oh no, it looks like you used up your last class credit, the last class. You know what? Today's on us. You thought you had a class, you did have a class. And that generosity zings them. And then
Yeah.
they that day and they go home and they say, where else in life are people hooking me up like that? I just like being there. I should be around those people. Those are good people. That is the economy. We put out the generosity, and hopefully enough money comes back where the first economy is spirit, the second economy is money. We've had to get wiser about that over the past few years.
Sure.
But we have maintained that pilot light all the way through.
No, I love that. And I mean, that's really kind of extending, like you said, generosity and also just kind of a human element to, you come in, this idea of the client is always right is sometimes challenged in the business space. There are definitely times where I think that you should be able to draw a line and say, wait a minute, this isn't what we agreed to. But yeah, if it's something where, it really is, a business decision of, is this an opportunity for me to create a lifetime follower?
And I mean, I can't imagine any other business model. I've been brought in on conversations and negotiations and strategies with all kinds of businesses, and sometimes I feel like there's just no heartbeat at all. It's just cold calculus.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we live in a capitalist society. It's a 1,000-headed beast. However you can do it, go ahead and make your living. But for me, I've been fortunate, and as long as I can keep this way going, I'll keep it going. Empire or no empire. Thanks, Nina.
I love Nina. Thanks so much for watching and tuning in, Nina. You're the best. So, John, one of the poses that I love the most is and I don't know any of their names, so forgive me, but there's the one where it's towards the end where you're sitting down and you're leaning back, and then
you sit between the heels.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that exposes one of the tightest parts of the human body, especially for mentally stressed out people, the hips and upper thighs, because as you go back, they sound like guitar strings getting tuned up.
Yep. Well, and the reason why I love it is because so far every instructor has pointed this out. Afterwards, when you're done, they say that might have been a really hard one for you guys. A lot of us are so used to leaning forward all day that's a really great, just like a corrective pose.
That is absolutely 100% true.
And I really appreciated that. And I was just wondering, a lot of us that are watching this and just people in general right now, we are getting worse and worse posture from being on our computers all day. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a yoga pose or just like a stretch, do you have any tip for something that people could do to kind of just work on their posture a little bit?
Yeah, when you look at experts in any given field, there's always some really clear-headed folk. There's always the believers, whether it's finance people trying to get rich quick or versus the Warren Buffetts. But if you look at that whole field of yogis and what they're saying is good for you, the point you already made, backbend, the hippies will say backbends are going to save humanity. And, I'm just showing you right now on the profile, I'm slightly stooped forward, right? I'm always leaning forward. When I sit in a chair, when I sit in a car, when I sit on a bench, when I get some coffee and I sit, always, always, always forward bend. So any kind of back bend, whether you just feel like you're a cat stretching and just arching your spine some.
Yeah.
I mean, there's gold in those hills. You can feel it in the neck. You immediately feel in the lower back. You can feel it in the tailbone sometimes. And when it lights up, just take a few breaths and hang out and work it. There's no science there. Be like a cat.
I love that. I love that. That's great. Well, John, we have a little bit of time left. But before
the pose you loved.
Yeah.
The one. Can you get your butt on the ground in that one yet?
No, I'm not flexible, and the most inflexible part of my body are my legs. Like I can't touch my toes to save my life.
Okay. I played soccer. I played soccer religiously for decades. That was the hardest pose. Yeah. All the old school teachers who saw me in class kept saying, "Oh, the ones you hate are the ones you need. The ones you hate are the ones you need." And sure enough, I don't know if you recall. I think I'm a little older than you. There was this cartoon where Bugs Bunny was getting lowered into a steaming pot, and his Every time his butt touched it, he kept bouncing up like he didn't want to go in.
Yeah.
That pose for me, my soccer legs would not let my hips sink, but over the months they did. And then I slowly went back and I slowly went back. Now I can get my head and shoulders on the ground, and the top of my legs are glowing during that, like throbbing. It's just
No, let's see. The couple of the hardest poses for me still are, any of the ones where I'm on my knees because I can't sit on my ankles yet, even if I like have my legs apart. And then the one where you spread your legs and then you bend down and you try and touch your ankles. I have to bend my knees.
Sure. Hamstrings.
And then I still can't touch my feet. So
just get the hamstrings.
That one I'm like shaking through the entire time.
Right. And that's going to go on for a little bit longer. And then all of a sudden you think that's the way it always is. And they stop. It just opens.
But it's crazy how much, some of the poses I've really been able to like quickly see like growth in. But man, it's so interesting because I recently brought some friends with me, and one of them has, I forget what part of his body is having problems, but he was like, yeah, whenever it got to that pose, it was really hard. And I couldn't really identify with that. But the last time that I did hot yoga, it was the day after a really, really hard upper body workout that I was sore from. And everything was hard.
Yeah. I'm familiar.
But I'm glad I did. The ladies at the front desk said that, one of the best things you can do for sore muscles is to stretch them out like that. And so
get some blood. I mean, they have all those micro tears wherever you're doing the workout. So just getting some fresh blood in there and doing some stretching is the best thing. The only thing easier to do that is get in a hot tub, which will get the blood going there too,
Got it.
So,
awesome.
What we talked about before we went on live, but we haven't talked about here?
Yeah.
Had somebody told me in law school, you don't have to go work 80 hours a week. You don't have to go try to impress these famous people. You can find a spot. And the spot that I have found, it's the equivalent of a relief pitcher in a baseball game. I show up in the 9th inning, I throw some heat, and then I go into the locker room. I put some ice on my shoulder. I'm all set. And I bill about 30 hours a month, give or take, for a Hollywood law firm, and I help spiff up their paperwork. So by the time it gets to the judge and gets to Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, it's ready to go. It sings. So and you ever see those car shows? We were talking about car shows. Right before they go out on stage, they have a whole team buffing the car. I'm a buffer.
Well, no, I love that. And I think that I think more and more people, especially, some younger people my age, and I think also, older people as well, are starting to realize that this idea of kind of the American dream and what success means in conjunction with it is it's not such a competitive thing, and it's not something that has to be defined on the outside
by what your parents or grandparents did.
Yep.
I mean, if I were to be honest, I would have to say, based on the amount of money I make, I'm a lawyer who happens to be a yoga teacher. But if anybody asks me, I'm a yoga teacher who happens to be moonlighting as a lawyer during those interstitial times, because my dream, my myth, the life I want to lead says that's the way to go. Don't worry about the money. Stay on point.
I love that. I love that. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on. I absolutely love talking with you, hearing more about your story, getting insights from you. For anybody who's interested in hot yoga, what's the address again for 105?
105f.com.
Perfect. And is there a general resource that you recommend for anybody who would be interested in learning more about it?
Well, I mean, if you just type in hot yoga or Bikram yoga, you can Google yourself until the sun comes up. The ancients say an ounce of practice is worth 10 tons of theory. So you just got to get in the room. I mean, there's nothing like, I could tell you all day long what it's like to get a bucket of cold water splash in your face, and then you get a bucket of cold water splash in your face.
Yeah. No, and that's another reason why honestly I love it, because they say, just put tennis shoes on and that kind of forces you to go to the gym, but you can go to the gym and still not do anything if you don't have a personal trainer. Again, it's just there's this combination with yoga of, you go and you do what you can, but once you go, like it just, I just remember yesterday, again, I was sore, it was painful, and there was a lot of laying down that I did, but I was just like, this is so much better than me not going.
This is an authentic encounter, and it's very intelligent struggling, very intelligent suffering, I call it.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, John. Maybe we'll have you on again soon. That would be awesome.
I know your calendar's all booked up, but I'd love to jump back.
It's not that booked. But no, we love having you on again, and it's great knowing you, John. Thank you so much.
I'll see you in the hot room soon, Joey.
All right. Sounds good. If you ever teach a 6:30 evening, I'll probably be there.
I do. You know what? I'll hit you up with an alert next time I'm set up at Lincoln Park 6:30.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Joey.
Bye.